I think for the first time in league history, the NFL has a really good chance of seeing two teams repeat as Super Bowl champions in 4 years. I'll tell you why on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase, still enjoying the Super Bowl win the Philadelphia Eagles pulled off a little under 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, defeating the Kansas City Chiefs. You guys can tell I'm still enjoying the Super Bowl win because every one of these podcasts I've done since that win, this is episode 7 since the victory, has been about Super Bowl 59. It's been about the 2024 season. Like, yes, the offseason's coming. It's actually here. The NFL Combine is next weekend, and we have to do Mock Draft Monday. We got to dive into the draft free agency decisions, both in-house and outside of the Eagles organization. Like, we have a lot of work to do this offseason getting ready for 2025. But I'm not ready to move on yet. I think you guys can tell that. I'm just enjoying this championship win so much, and I think you guys are all too. And I think the Eagles are to a degree as well. I mean, just look at Quinyon Mitchell at the Super Bowl parade. I think the Eagles are enjoying this win themselves as well. But one thing that I think makes this team so primed to get back to the Super Bowl next year in Santa Clara and potentially repeat as Super Bowl champions, why I think this is the best opportunity the Eagles have ever had in their franchise's history to be a dynasty, to not be a one-hit wonder like they were in 2017, winning their first ever world championship, but not getting back there for, 7 years. Why I think that is, although I'm enjoying this Super Bowl win and I'm not ready to move on, the players, the coaches, the front office, the organization themselves, like, yes, they have enjoyed this title win. It's been years in the making of overcoming the Super Bowl loss of 2022, the collapse of last year. Like, this is, they finally put a bow on this story, and they ended it in confetti. Like, they got revenge. Like, it's kind of like Avengers Endgame. They lost to Thanos at first in Infinity War, but they got the band back together in Endgame, and they pulled this thing off. But now you got to bring the Avengers back, right? And you got to do that to repeat in 2025. And I think this team, they're already ready to go for the next run. Like, Jalen Hurts, his press conference and locker room clear-out day, like, you could see it in his face. You could see it in the eyes of DeVonta Smith and the tone of A.J. Brown's Instagram posts. Like, there is still a hunger within this team, a motivation to do more. Although they did it, they dethroned the dynasty, they stopped the three-peat, they got their revenge on Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and the Kansas City Chiefs. There's still an unsatisfied look to them, and there's still an unsatisfied tone in their voices. I think this win, honestly, like, just vindicated for them what they felt about Super Bowl 57, that this was years in the making. Like, they should have done this years ago. Like, this isn't some fun surprise. Like, they said this was a long time coming, and this win was more, see, like, damn, we should have did this a few years ago. Like, we knew we were capable of this, and we just proved to the league, and we want to go do it again. That's why I think they can be a dynasty, because they have, of course, they're young, and they have their core locked up, the majority of it long-term on both offense and defense. They have the best general manager in football. They have the most underrated head coach in football, and still they have, Vic Fangio, Jeff Stoutland, a really good coaching staff. Like, there's all these reasons they're primed to run it back next year. Like, they should still run the NFC, but it's also because of the mindset. Like, it's the makeup of these players, both young and old. Like, the way Jalen Hurts is wired, DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith, and Jordan Davis, and all the guys from Georgia. Like, these aren't players that are wrapping up their careers. Not even close. Like, they're all so young. They're just getting started. This isn't Brandon Graham going out on top. They have a lot of ball left. There isn't a satisfied feeling. I'm sure there's a satisfactory when it comes to, like, that chapter of their career. Like, when it comes to that story of avenging 2022 and beating the Chiefs and stopping history and getting a ring. Like, when you don't have that first ring, especially as a quarterback, there's definitely a weight on your shoulders that you have to get that done. So I feel like that kind of pressure is over, and so there's a satisfied feeling there. But these guys aren't saying, I've got my ring, I'm good for my career. Like, no, they want to be a dynasty. Jalen Hurts, he said it in that mic'd up Super Bowl segment to DeVonta Smith. He's like, we got some catching up to do. And he's talking about catching up to the Chiefs in the ring count. Like, they want to be a team that has 2, 3, 4 rings as well. They don't want to be the 2017 Eagles that have 1 ring. Like, yes, you'll be remembered forever in Philadelphia. This team's going to go down as the greatest team in franchise history, and I don't know how you top this. I don't know if they ever will, even if they win more titles. But it's still not enough, and I love that. That's why I think this team can run it back next year and beyond 2025. And it shouldn't surprise you that that's the makeup of this football team. I mean, look at all the players that come from Alabama, that come from Georgia. Winning, it's not a fun surprise, like I said. It's an expectation. Like, what they did just, like, validates, like, they're like, yeah, that's what we were supposed to do. This isn't 2017 where they shocked the world. They stopped the greatest quarterback of all time who threw for 500 yards and the greatest coach of all time, one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history, with a backup quarterback in a shootout. Like, that was a miraculous Cinderella story to win your first ever title. I mean, that's movie stuff. That team, I think, felt satisfied, and you could see that in the upcoming seasons and in the seasons to come. But this team is like, no, like, this is what DeVonta Smith is used to. He won multiple national championships. He won a Heisman. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. Like, this is what he does. Jalen Hurts, all he's known in his football career is winning. Same with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. Like, they won back-to-back national championships. Repeating as champions is in their DNA. So this team has the right makeup to run it back. And there's a lot of it, again, is the talent, the youth, the contracts, the just overall perfect build of this roster that Howie Roseman has constructed. But it's also just the makeup of these players. And what's so exciting about this is they are young. Like, they are not satisfied, and they have so much ball left in them that they're going to have so many opportunities to get more rings. And I love that. This team not only knows how to deal with failure and adversity, as we saw this year, coming off that Super Bowl loss, coming off the 2023 collapse, coming off the slow 2-2 start. This team is so good dealing with adversity, but an underrated part of this team as well, they know how to deal with success. I don't know if the team after 2017, that core, knew how to deal with success. There's a lot of teams in the history of not just the NFL, but sports that don't always know how to handle success well. And it cuts windows short. It closes windows quicker than maybe it was predicted. And that's what's really cool about this football team. Like, I really think you could see Eagles Chiefs being the NFL's version of what the NBA saw for years with Cavaliers Warriors. Like, I would not be surprised if this is the Super Bowl yet again for Super Bowl 60. And maybe the Chiefs don't get back, but I think the Eagles are going to within the next year or two. Like, they are going to run the NFC. Sure, Jaden Daniels going to be a year better. There's a lot of teams in the NFC that are young quarterbacks, pretty good growing rosters that are going to be better. But the Eagles are still the cream of the crop of this conference. And I really do think, like, my take of the day, the Eagles have repeat written all over them. And I'm sure a lot of us said that after 2017 as well, but this one makes a lot more sense. It makes so much more sense. This team's not going anywhere, and they're not satisfied with just one Lombardi trophy, especially Jalen Hurts. Like, it's all about legacy now, and they want to build on that legacy by winning more championships. That is the focus. After the parade, I think it's right back to work. Jalen Hurts said it best in that press conference in the locker room on Locker Room Clearout Day. He said, this has been great, like, to celebrate all the work we did in 2024, but I'm already behind other quarterbacks and their offseason workouts and their plan, and I got to catch up. And I love, like, that's not fun for me and for fans. Like, I'm not ready to move on from that win, and I'm not going to be for a while. After this show, I'm going to be watching NFL Films, Super Bowl content all night long. I just got the Eagles Super Bowl ESPN magazine. I'm going to enjoy it. Like, that's not my job to quickly run it back. But for the Eagles, it's good to know, like, they're already focused on climbing that mountaintop again, which is impressive because that can be an exhausting process. And when you win, I would understand feeling that satisfaction for a while, but not this team. They're ready. And I think that's why they have repeat written all over them. And it's the best chance this franchise has ever had at potentially having a shot at becoming a dynasty. That is so hard to do. And there's only a few of them in NFL history for a reason. but this is the best chance they've ever had at pulling off that kind of history. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, I do want to tell you, sticking with the 2024 Super Bowl theme, I do want to tell you why I enjoyed this year's championship more than the first one in 2017. I'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature. It keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, you never feel like you're missing out on your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid right away, instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets, $150 if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, I want to continue to talk about the Eagles' Super Bowl win against the Kansas City Chiefs because it was just so enjoyable and why I like it so much more than that first win in 2017. And look, it's like picking between your two kids, right? I mean, how can you pick between one kid or the other, right? But I think all parents do deep down, they've got a favorite. And 2017, like the first one is always special. Like, that's a feeling that you've never had before, winning a championship, the euphoria of that first title, of experiencing every little moment for the first time, just being on that stage, the game-winning plays, seeing the Lombardi being brought out by one of the Hall of Famers with the Lombardi instrumental music in the background, and they're, bringing it down to the podium, seeing the championship gear commercial, the parade for the first time. Like, there are the confetti. There are so many moments that you dreamed of as a kid, seeing your team be a part of. And in that first one, like there is a feeling that you'll never match. Like 2024, they'll never be able to match that first time feeling that 2017 had. And the cool part is you got to, with the Eagles' 2 championships of the last 8 years, you got to experience 2 completely different title wins. It is 2 completely different experiences. One was a shootout against an all-time great with a backup quarterback. It's a Cinderella underdog story. It's a close down to the wire game, so there's nerves that you didn't feel in the second one. It is that first time, so that's completely different. And then the second one is like a revenge game, a beatdown of a dynasty. And you stopped a three-peat. You stopped history. Like, there were higher stakes, but there was also an expectation with this team that there wasn't last time. So it is cool you got to experience 2 very unique, different types of Super Bowl wins. But the 2024 one, to me, is just, it's more enjoyable for a lot of reasons. I mean, this team was exactly the kind of roster that I love, that I would build as a general manager, with the youth on defense, with finally investing in cornerback. Howie Roseman drafted more my guys of mine than he ever has in my 7, now going on 8 seasons, covering the Eagles on Locked On Eagles. It was just such an exciting team on both sides of the ball, so much talent, just weapons everywhere. I mean, how do you not be a fan of this team if you're a kid trying to pick an NFL team? So there's a lot of reasons to love the 2024 Eagles, but a big reason is who they won it with at quarterback, because they won it with Jalen Hurts. And again, not to take away from the amazing story that was Nick Foles. I mean, to have, again, a backup quarterback outduel the greatest quarterback of all time, and by the way, blow out the #1 ranked defense in the NFC Championship. To do that, to win the first Lombardi, and to call the trick play the Philly special. It's one of the coolest stories in the history of sports. But why it feels better with Jalen Hurts is like I was saying in segment 1, this doesn't feel like it's the end. Like, it doesn't feel like this is the only championship that we could potentially get with this core. It doesn't feel like a one-off. You won it with the guy you're moving forward into the future with. And you didn't really know after 2017 if you were going to compete for more championships, if you were going to build all. Like, the cool thing about this is it feels like just the start. It feels like it's the wrap of a chapter of this story, but it doesn't feel like the end of a story, of the entire story, because you have Jalen. He's only 26 years old. Like, you have him for so long still in the future. Whereas in 2017, you won it with a backup, and sure, you had Carson Wentz coming back, but you didn't know what you were going to get with Carson coming off the injury. You didn't know how he was going to perform in the playoffs or if he ever got to the stage of Nick Foles, and he never did. He didn't come close. He played 2 drives in a wild card game before getting taken out. So that's kind of a fun part of this feeling, the excitement of this Super Bowl win as well, is that you're doing it with your franchise quarterback. Like, I'm not going to lie, a part of me, maybe you guys didn't feel this way, but a part of me would have enjoyed it more in 2017 if you won it with Carson, because that was the guy you started it with. It would have been more satisfying because you went through that whole journey with him, and then for somebody else to finish it off. And Nick Foles was a unique case because we knew Nick so well in Philly, so it did feel great, but it feels good to like know that you went through the heartbreak of 2022 with Jalen Hurts. For me, like, all of the back and forth debating and the doubts of 2021, the collapse of 2023, to see it all come full circle and feel like a proper wrap up to this story, and for him to have one of the greatest Super Bowl performances ever and come up just short against Pat Mahomes. And then 2 years later, he gets his revenge and he stops a three-peat. Like, for him, and now you know, like, he's still the QB1 moving forward. I don't know. I think that helps make it feel a little bit better. That it doesn't feel, and I'm not calling the 2017 Eagles fluky, but it doesn't feel as, I don't want to use that word, so I won't. I'll say it doesn't feel like it's potentially a one-off like it did in 2017. And we thought after that, like Doug Peterson said, it could be the new normal because Carson Wentz was coming back. But the proof is in the pudding now with Jalen. It was all a projection with Carson. It was all based off of 13 elite regular season games with Carson. With Jalen, he's made the playoffs in 4 straight years. Every year he's been the starter. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. He's had 2 of the greatest Super Bowl performances the NFL has ever seen. You know what he is in these moments at this stage now. So you know in the future, if they get back there, Jalen can win it all for you. He's already done it. And I think that's part of what adds to the, there's so many reasons for the excitement of this championship win in 2024, but that's a cool part of it too. And what's exciting about that win for Jalen is now it starts like the legacy building talk. With Nick Foles, there was never going to be legacy building after the 2017 win. With Jalen, it's like, okay, now not only is the debate over about if you're a bridge quarterback, like if you're top 10, if you're someone you can win with, if you're a system guy, like no. Those debates are over. Jalen Hurts has proven he's an elite quarterback. I think he's top 5. I'm not going to say he's top 3 or top 2, but he's absolutely top 5 now. And he's a top 2 player in big games. And you can say now, let's start to build on the legacy. We can talk about a Hall of Fame career. He's one of only 2 quarterbacks in the league right now that are under the age of 30 that have a Super Bowl ring. He's only one of, 5 quarterbacks in the league right now that have a ring? It's him, Pat Mahomes, Matt Stafford, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers, if Rodgers even plays. Those 5. I don't think I'm missing anybody. If I am, it's nobody under the age of 30 that's been a starter. So that's the fun, exciting part about this win too, is it starts to build the legacy part of your quarterback story. And that's cool because not only does he have a ring and can build on that, he's potentially going to go down as one of the best big game quarterbacks of all time. I saw this on X the other day. Since 2021, Jalen Hurts actually has the best EPA combined with completion percentage over expected. EPA and CPOE combined, Jalen is number 1 in those 2 metrics that are very important for quarterback play in the playoffs from the divisional round and on. So the biggest games, when the games get bigger and bigger, the 3 most important games of the year, Jalen Hurts, efficiency-wise, since 2021, since being the full-time starter in Philly, has been the best quarterback in those playoff games. He's been the most efficient quarterback in the divisional round, the championships, and the Super Bowl. Like, that's incredible. And it doesn't stop there when it comes to his big game resume he's building. Listen to these numbers from Jalen Hurts. So as I said, he's first in the league in 2021 in playoff EPA and CPOE in the divisional round and on. He has the highest career completion percentage in Super Bowl history. In 2 games, he has had a combined 73.3% of his passes completed. He has the 6th highest passer rating of all time in the Super Bowl at a 109.9. 6.4. He's 5-0 in the last 2 years against the other 4 top 5 quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, beat him. Josh Allen, beat him. Lamar Jackson, beat him. Pat Mahomes, beat him twice, including in a Super Bowl. That adds to the excitement of this win. It does. Like, quarterback play, it matters. Like, it's not everything. I don't care how the Eagles win. I don't care how they win a championship. But when you do it with your quarterback being great, being historically great, and especially when he's young, I think it does add to the excitement of it. I really think it does. Because everybody wants a great quarterback. Quarterbacks, like, that's the legacy talk, and it's cool. Like, the Eagles will be remembered forever with Jalen Hurts being an all-time great. And so that's a cool part of the story, and it's unbelievable. It's not unbelievable if you see his entire career, including college, but it is pretty amazing looking at his numbers in big games, just how lethal Jalen Hurts has been in the playoffs. It's him and Pat Mahomes. They're the 2 best big game quarterbacks in the league right now, and Jalen's going to go down as one of the best all time in big moments. He saves his best for last, truly. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles, getting into a little offseason talk. How big will this offseason be for the Eagles to maintain this championship window? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, how important is the 2025 offseason for the Eagles when it comes to this dynasty talk, when it comes to stretching out the window, the contention window, when it comes to repeating as Super Bowl champions in 2025? How important really is it when you look at the free agents they got to re-sign? Zach Bond, Milton Williams, Mekhi Becton, Josh Sweat. You got Isaiah Rodgers thrown in there as well, and Kenneth Gainwell. When it comes to the free agents that could be out there you can sign from other teams, when it comes to potential trades, like Myles Garrett's out there, when it comes to the NFL draft, how crucial is this offseason for the Eagles' future? Again, yeah, losing Sweat, as I've said on the show before, Milton Williams, Zach Bond especially, Mekhi Becton, it would suck. Like, you don't want to lose all 4 of those players. I think especially Zach Bond. Like, no matter what, you got to find a way to get him re-signed. I want Milton Williams back a lot. I think he's going to get a bag. I think he's going to get $20+ million a year. I mean, he had the second highest pass rush win rate in all of football this year. Like, he is special. A lot of that was one-on-ones with Jalen Carter taking the attention away, but he's one of the best one-on-one interior pass rushers in football. He's going to get a deal. Josh Sweat, after that incredible Super Bowl performance that you could argue should have won him Super Bowl MVP, that's going to get him paid somewhere, and he's still only 27 years old. Mekhi Becton, coming off a career year. He's young. He'll probably get a bag. Losing those guys is going to suck. You got to make sure you bring back Zach Bond, especially with Nakobe Dean's injury. He might not even play next year. But with all that being said, I really don't know if this offseason is like massive when it comes to this window we're talking about and making sure it stays open and potentially trying to repeat, potentially trying to be a dynasty of your own. I don't know if this is like a critical offseason because even as much as, again, I don't want to lose those 4 players, especially Zach Bond, let me keep saying that, especially Zach Bond, they're not like critical core pieces. You know what I mean? Like, if you lose Josh Sweat, you still have Nolan Smith. You still have Jalix Hunt. This is a really good draft class when it comes to edge rushers. There are some good free agent options. You could explore the idea of trading at some point this year for a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett. Like, I really think that's an option. Milton Williams, yeah, you don't want to lose him, but Moro Ijoma this year was top 15 in pass rusher win rate, and he was really good in the playoffs, and he's only in year 3. Jalen Carter is going to allow for mismatches all the time for his defensive tackle counterpart. You have Jordan Davis still as well, so you have depth on the interior. Mekhi Becton, he had such a great year, is an amazing story, but Jeff Stoutland, no matter who he puts in on the offensive line, they ball out. So Zach Bond's the one guy. Again, don't want to lose him. I think that will really affect this defense. But if you lose the other 3 as badly as I want, at least 1 or 2 back, it's not going to make or break this football team because they have core pieces at those positions already locked up long-term. They have an elite quarterback, and they're elite and locked up long-term at all the main positions that it matters most. Honestly, I think they'll probably start to look more at like future contracts than some of these pending free agents. Like, I think they're going to start thinking about extending Cam Jurgens. I think they might think more about how do we make this contract work with Dallas Goedert, that it works for both sides after his elite playoff run. I think, they want to decide about Jordan Davis's 5th-year option. Do they pick up the option? Do they try to extend him and get him to a more spread out, team-friendly deal? I would like that, the extension to lower Jordan Davis's number, maybe combine that with the 5th-year option. They might start to look at future contracts more than talking about signing Sweat and Milton and Becton. Zach Bond should be a priority, but the other ones, as much as I'd like them back, in Milton and Sweat were so good in the Super Bowl, and I'd like them back, I'm not going to be devastated if they don't return. I will say one lesson Howie needs to learn this offseason, especially he should learn this from the 2023 offseason and the 2018 offseason. Find the balance. I should basically say your 2 offseasons you've had with Howie that followed a Super Bowl. Find the balance of, quote-unquote, running it back and being disciplined and not too loyal. You know what I mean? So you don't want to do what you did in 2023 and just let your entire spine of your defense walk out the door. I mean, you let your both starting safeties leave and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps. You let both starting linebackers leave and TJ Edwards and Kazir White. Yes, you can't pay everybody, especially after winning a Super Bowl. Guys are going to cash in. You can't keep everyone. You got to prioritize certain positions. Being cheap at linebacker and safety, it makes more sense than being cheap at, edge rusher and left tackle. I totally agree with that. But I think he went too far learning from, I think in 2018 he was too loyal, right? He ran it back with Jason Peters for a few years when he probably shouldn't have. And he guaranteed Alshon Jeffrey's money and backloaded the contract, and Alshon regressed and got injured, and he paid for that. Right, so after 2017, I think Howie was a little bit too loyal, but after 2023, after 2022, I think he took it too far. Losing 2 or 3 of those 4 players, sure. Losing Marcus Epps, whatever. Losing Kazir White, whatever. I can even understand why you let TJ Edwards walk, but you shouldn't have let both Chauncey Gardner-Johnson leave and TJ Edwards. That's what I'm saying, is I'm okay if you lose, heck, even 3 of the 4 top free agents you have. If you lose Sweat, Becton, and Milton Williams, I'm okay with that. But you got to learn from 2022, 2023, and you got to bring back Zach Bond. Especially, like I said, Nakobe Dean, he might not play next year. And if he does, it's not going to be till later on in the regular season. Maybe it's for the playoffs. So I'm okay if those other guys leave. I would like Milton Williams back if the price is right. But the guy was wearing a Clutch Sports agency hoodie in his locker room cleanout interview. So I think he's about to cash in. And Sweats, he got Drew Rosenhaus to be his agent right before the Super Bowl. Those guys are going to leave. But learn from the 2023 offseason and don't go too far with letting a lot of that core out the door, especially at linebacker. I think you got to pay at least one linebacker, and Zach Bond was a first-team All-Pro, and I don't think it was a fluke. I don't think that was a one-year wonder. I think Zach Bond is a legitimate elite linebacker, and I think you got to keep him. I do wonder, though, what Howie Roseman's brain's going to say to him. Is he going to be like, I need to learn from letting TJ Edwards leave and Kazir White and remembering the bad linebacker play of Zach Cunningham in 2023 and, the ghost of Shaq Leonard? I wonder if he's going to see the Bond situation like that and say, I got to learn from that and do better. Or is he going to say, I found TJ Edwards as an undrafted rookie. I found Zach Bond as an edge rusher that I signed for basically nothing. Switched him to linebacker with Vic Fangio, who could do it again. First team All-Pro. I can do it again. I found Oren Burks this year, who had a really good end of the regular season and a really good playoff run when Nakobe Dean went down. Oren Burks was really good. Top 5 overall graded player in the Super Bowl for the Eagles, according to Pro Football Focus. He could say, I found these guys. I found Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round. I've gone value at linebacker all the time. I could do it again. I wonder what kind of approach he's going to have at that position. Because you could go one or two ways. You could understand the thought process. Both ones I just laid out, you could understand both of them considering the situation. You guys know where I stand here. Again, I need Bond back. I really want Bond back on this defense, but I don't know what Howie Roseman's thought process is going to be. I'm very curious because he's never paid a linebacker a big deal, but at the same time, he never paid a running back before Saquon Barkley, and here we are. Saquon Barkley had the best year a running back has ever had, and it was with Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot more talk getting into those free agents, a lot more offseason topics that will start tomorrow. right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. But we're going to wrap up today's show. Thanks as always for making us your first listen each and every day. Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.